I'm gonna be admitting everybody on the Zoom. There's 42 participants.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I didn't even have to increase it.
I suspected. We, there's a time in the future we will.
You never know.
Commissioner Bear, can you
What?
pull your microphone down, please? And stop. Thank you.
Might be helpful.
I didn't hear you fix something to swearing in.
Boy, there's quite a few people. I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Here. Also, I didn't want to watch you guys all do to do a roll call thing.
Yes, let's.
Okay, maybe just add that on there.
Okay.
I'll remember it. Figuring out, Norman, Gordon Norman on. Okay. And there's the start.
It's 7 o'clock. Oh, hold on. Wait a minute, come here. Okay, it's, are you ready now?
Mr. Norman, are you on mute?
Apparently not.
Well, we're gonna do a roll call, so we'll call him then.
Okay, let's open this up with a roll call. It is, what, almost 2 minutes after 7? And Dana, if you would read the roll.
Sure thing. Commissioner Orsi.
Here.
Commissioner Scobie. Here. Vice Chair Drukowski. Here. Chair Slothauer.
Here.
Commissioner Frey.
Here. Commissioner
Norman.
Here.
And I'm not sure if Commissioner Starbuck is here on Zoom. I think not. We think he said he was traveling last week, so.
Okay, not getting anything. Okay. I now declare this public hearing is open at 7:02 PM on the 5th day of October. This is an official public hearing before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for a request for a conditional use permit to construct a 110-room hotel, 2 restaurant spaces, meeting rooms, and spa, as well as 32 suites. The applicant has also requested a variance to certain height restrictions and a plan review for commercial design standards, parking and signage. The applicable substantive criteria are contained in the Bandon Municipal Code and the policies of the comprehensive plan. The applicable criteria can be found in the staff report. Please address your comments to these criteria or criteria you believe apply to this decision. Okay, oh, I'm sorry, there's something that I meant to do here. I'd like to introduce our new city manager. And his name is Tori Contreras. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you're the new man stepping onto the hot plate.
No, we're not gonna put him in the hot seat tonight, but I wanted you to just know that he's sitting here and helping if we need it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing that I wanted to say is, as a commission, we try to, just so everybody knows, we try to follow the rules. We try not to be involved in who knew who or who knows who. And so we follow the rules as strictly as we can and don't go anywhere from there. So if you're asking, saying, if you want to say, oh, he's a great guy, we don't want to hear it. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there because I've heard people saying, well, these people have money or they have this and that, and so they're bowing to them. We don't do that. Official notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission can consider laws, ordinances, court decisions without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. A copy of the minutes of this hearing will be available at city offices. A copy of the rules and procedures I am reading will be available in the city offices as part of this file. First of all, are there any commissioners who wish to declare ex parte contact or a site visit?
I walked the property today again for the second time.
Okay, but, and it didn't.
It does
affect-
not, no, I just was doing
didn't
it as a
affect your ability to
suggestion,
make a
no.
decision, right? Catherine?
I've overheard several conversations and been party to conversations, but it does not impact my decision, and it was kind of hard to avoid in town over the last week.
Yeah. Tom,
Nothing since of what I reported last week.
okay. Bill?
Same with me, nothing since I reported at last meeting.
I'm the same. I have nothing new.
Don't forget Commissioner Norman.
Oh.
Nothing, Mr. Chair, nothing.
Okay, sorry about that, Commissioner Norman. Are there any commissioners present who feel they may have a conflict of interest, bias, or other reason to be disqualified from participating in this hearing? No?
No,
Does anyone wish to challenge one of the commissioners as being able to participate? Okay. Staff, do you have anything new?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I prepared a staff addendum for you, which you have in front of you. There's a copy here on the podium for those who didn't see it, and it's available online. I just wanted to go through a couple of things with you first. I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning, that when we first reviewed this plan set, we deemed it incomplete on August 10th, and there were a couple of things that were missing at the time. We were missing a landscaping plan meeting our requirements, a geotech report, and a few other small items that we did bring up in the staff report, setbacks, et cetera. And I did discuss with the applicant, we had some concerns around transportation at the time, that the evidence they provided probably wasn't sufficient for an approval. And so at that first hearing last week, we did go through our initial staff report and let you know that we requested additional evidence around each of those items. And in particular, I called out a couple of them tonight in the staff report that I wanted to go through. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is the transportation. So the applicant provided a transportation or a traffic assessment prepared by parametrics that looked at the impacts at 3 intersections. So the one that seemed to have the greatest impact was the Seabird and 101 intersection. And I think that's where we also heard the most public comment. There's some concern, and it's been ongoing about this intersection. Their report said that the intersection is currently a D, but would move to an E in 2026, regardless of any development. And then it would reach an F in 2026 with the development, which is considered a failing intersection. So in our initial staff report, we sort of went through some of the options that you might have, which would be limited. But what I hadn't considered before was kind of discussing mitigating measures with you. So because we know that the intersection is failing and would be failing because of this development, or at least reaching that level, it feels like there should be some sort of mitigating measures that are taken in order to alleviate the congestion caused by this particular development. I did go through this in this staff report and did provide a suggestion in here for a condition of approval that maybe was a little bit premature after getting talking it through. I think that we can request some additional information be provided that shows different options for mitigating measures. So I may ask that we sort of re-review that condition of approval to make it a little bit more broad, to allow a traffic engineer and expert to make a recommendation about how you would reduce that congestion. Does that make sense? Okay. I got a lot of questions. We got a lot of testimony on that, and we've gotten a lot of questions from commissioners about that. That if there is an impact, what can we do as a city to sort of mitigate it? I also wanted to clarify that at the last meeting, I don't remember when it came up, but it did come up in public testimony quite a bit, that it seemed like it was being said that the city required the hotel to enter from Carter And I wanted to just be clear that that was not entering from Carter via Spinnaker or Lincoln. We only required that Carter go through from the existing stub to Beach Loop Drive. It is currently a platted street, and so we would like that to go through for connectivity. We also were requiring another street that would connect north-south. Also, the applicant provided some additional testimony or evidence requesting some clarification, it seemed, about staff's position regarding public and private rights of way. So we have said that we would like the rights of way that are going through there to be public. Some of their plans show a private street with a public easement. Our policy is that we have public rights of way with public streets on them. I think it's probably unclear from the applicant's proposal which streets they intended to be private, if there is any sort of confusion. So I think you need more information before you can make a determination on that. Also, the height and the variance, we had a little bit of concern or question around that. Just as a reminder, their request is to go to a 35-foot height limit on the Meadow Lodge. Our code in the CD1 allows that, but you have to sort of check some boxes first. There's 5 requirements, and one of them is to have a 312 roof pitch. So they're not asking for a variance for the height, but they are asking for a variance to that specific architectural feature in order to meet the requirement to get that 35-foot height limit. So I wanted to make sure that that was abundantly clear. They did submit additional evidence regarding the sunlight. It was a sun study showing shadows in the summer and winter solstice that projected what the shadows of the buildings would look like on surrounding properties. However, we did not receive any additional evidence regarding views. From a parking perspective, again, the applicant has only requested 2 RV recreational vehicle parking spaces, while our code requires 8. The Planning Commission does have the ability to change the number of off-street parking spaces, but you should make that determination, or at least make that discussion and or have that discussion and make a determination about whether or not you want to limit the number of RV parking spaces on site. And I just wanted to clarify in here as well. The timing, so there was some question that came up last time about whether or not, or how the city's process works when a conditional use permit is granted. The standard for a conditional use permit is that it is valid for 1 year. There is a provision within that chapter that allows the Planning Commission to set a lesser or greater time if they deem that appropriate. So you could extend it to 2 years of the validity of the conditional use permit if you wanted to. And so once a conditional use permit is received, they have a year to get a zoning compliance permit. Then in our process chapter, it does tell us that they have 2 years from the date of approval of a zoning compliance application to get their building permit, their first building permit, and then they have 5 years from that date of final decision to get all of their building permits. So it is an extended process, but like I said last time, there are certain milestones that you have to meet. And finally, I wanted to bring up the geotech report, because we did receive a letter this evening from Sean Malone on October 5th. Requesting more information about why a geotech report was not included as part of this application when the site has high or very high landslide susceptibility. And so we did request that during the initial and complete review, which is why I brought that up in the beginning. And the applicant did not want to submit that as part of the application. We do allow the submittal of applications separately. They opted to consolidate these and not submit that one. I would just say that if something came up during a geologic assessment review that changed any location of parking or the structure, anything that required additional review, they would have to come back to you for a conditional use permit modification. So, but it's up to you to determine whether or not you need that information in order to make a decision. Also in that letter, there was a request for the record to be left open for an additional 7 days, which is allowed by the ORS. And so I wanted to let you know about, in case anyone isn't familiar, there is a rule that someone can request that record be left open 7 days following a hearing. In that case, someone can also request the record be left open an additional 7 days to respond to that. And then there is another 7 days in which the applicant gets to respond. So I just wanted to make you all aware that the decision for this application will not be tonight, and may even be as much as 21 days or more from now. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Yes, I have some questions, please, Dana. On your initial staff report, and there were a number of recommendations asking for additional evidence. Were those submitted by the applicant?
So the applicant submitted this evening some responses to the staff report, but they were submitted rather late in the afternoon. So I could not tell you with certainty that all of them have been, that all the boxes have been checked.
Okay,
I just know we're still missing some of that information that I went over this evening.
and can we go back? You called it a geotech review. So
Yes.
that's not required by the city? Did I understand you correctly?
So a geologic assessment review is required for any property that's subject to the hazard overlay zone, which is where the high or very high landslide or liquefaction susceptibility is based on a map that we adopted, I believe, in 2018 or 2019. And so this site has, I believe, high landslide susceptibility. And so they would be required at some point before construction to submit for a geologic assessment review.
Do we know why they have until beginning the construction to submit the report instead of along with their other application?
I don't know why they did not submit it with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know why the city doesn't require it up front?
Sorry, why we don't require it. Well, we don't require that applicants consolidate their applications. They can choose to do that.
Okay.
Or not. I think certainly there are times where it makes sense to separate them or combine them. So there might be something that I don't know.
But this is considered a consolidated application, is that
That's
correct?
That's correct, because
So you could have a consolidated application and then another application, it sounds like.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes, okay.
Anybody else?
No.
Gordon?
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chair. So Dana, so we have a commission meeting scheduled for October 19th, correct?
That's correct.
And if we don't approve this particular project tonight, are we going to be talking about it also on the 19th, or would we be talking about it on November 16th? Do we know?
We can't approve it tonight, Gordon.
Yes, I
Yeah, it
understand.
can't be approved tonight because we need to leave the record open. You can close the hearing and leave the record open though, so we don't have to notice when the date of, or we don't have to, sorry, provide notice at tonight's meeting of when the date of decision is. So depending on the time frame about those requests that I mentioned, it could be on October 19th, or it could be on November 2nd. We might have to call another special meeting.
And that would
Okay,
bring
thank
us
you.
to the 21, the 3.
Well, we had to reschedule the 19th or the 26th meeting because the Oregon Planners Conference is happening. So we already rescheduled that to the 19th, so we're sort of missing. Well, we might have to be at the November 2nd meeting. Any other questions?
Okay. We are going to be hearing from people speaking. First of all, if you spoke last night, either on Zoom or here, please, you only get one time and we have not closed the hearing. So please don't speak again. And any of those who wish to speak, please should have signed in with on the sign-in list and let the city recorder know. Please keep this hearing orderly and courteous. When it becomes your turn to testify, please state your name, and I guess we don't need your address. And speak distinctly for the recorder. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The applicant, well, they were granted 20 minutes, but they do get 10 minutes at the end of this. So that's correct, right?
The applicant still gets their opportunity to
Yeah,
present. Yeah,
Yeah.
tonight. So they should go.
20 minutes.
Mr. Chair,
minutes.
would the applicant present now or after public comment? And at
Ye-
what point with the commission?
Oh, so they get just excuse me, they get another 20 minutes to start out?
Yes.
I've had it with them.
And to clarify, will the commission be able to direct questions to the applicant after their presentation, but prior to public comment or after public comment?
So the applicant will have the opportunity to speak now for 20 minutes, and then they'll have the opportunity to rebut any public comment at the end as well. So I think it's up to the chair whether or not folks are allowed to direct questions at the applicant.
I think the commission should be able to direct questions to the applicant at even during or after their 20 minutes, but please don't interrupt, make it polite. And oh, the other thing is, when you're talking, please, you have 3 minutes, that nothing profane, obscene, abusive, threatening, or slanderous. And please don't direct questions to the planning commission during the public comment period. So, all right,
So then the applicant is.
Mr. Applicant,
Good evening. My name is Adam Gould. I'm an attorney based mostly out of Coos Bay. I'm pleased to be here tonight. I am tonight representing the applicant, Coos Curry Consulting Group and Sherry McGrath, and of course, Bandon Beach Ventures LLC and the representative Brett Perkins. Also members of their team are here as well, a couple of who you'll be hearing from. I'd like to start off this evening simply by reading the first paragraph of the purpose of the Controlled Development CD1 zone. It's Rule 17-20010. I think it's important because a lot of times in these complicated and somewhat controversial processes, we kind of get lost in the weeds. We kind of get caught up in minutia of a lot of these things. But I think it's important to come back to the very core of what a CD zone needs to be and what the applicant is doing to ensure that it comes within this zone and enhances this zone. It says that the purpose of the CD1 zone is to recognize the scenic and unique qualities of Bandon's oceanfront and nearby areas, to maintain these qualities as much as possible by carefully controlling nature and scale of future development in this zone. It is intended that a mix of uses would be permitted, including residential, tourist, commercial, and recreational. Future development is to be controlled in order to enhance and protect this area's unique qualities. And members of the commission, that is exactly what this applicant is doing with this project. They are focusing on the unique qualities of Bandon's oceanfront and nearby areas, and they are developing this, and you'll see more from the team tonight, and you have already, about how their development is controlled and enhances and protects this area's unique qualities. And it is a very unique, this Bandon oceanfront with the dunes and the ocean vegetation. One of the things that is not part of the unique atmosphere that we have in this area of Coos County is gorse that was brought here from out of the area and is very invasive. Remember that this property, before this applicant came here, was covered in gorse, and they are bringing back what nature intended to be there, and they're doing it through their very brilliant and creative design that is displayed throughout their application. I'm going to start off briefly by referring to Mr. Malone's letters that were submitted both last week and this week. Mr. Malone, of course, is I think quite familiar with the commission. He represents and is part of the Oregon Coast Alliance. he's their attorney and I believe member. He has submitted 2 letters in opposition to this project. First one last week, he starts off by saying that well, we can't even get into the variance part of this application. Again, this is a conditional use application and a variance. We can't even get into the variance part because he cites the law that says, the code that says a conditional use permit shall not grant variances to the regulations unless otherwise prescribed by this title, and that conditional use cannot grant variances. What he neglects to show is that just the next sentence over on that exact same rule states that they can be submitted in conjunction with a conditional use permit on a form provided by staff. And that's what's happened here. We have a form provided by staff and it's got 2 boxes, conditional use permit and variance, and they're both checked. So this is absolutely appropriate for this commission to consider both the conditional use permit and the variance. Looking to his concerns on the variance, he talks about, he goes into great detail about how the variance should not be granted, mostly because he says it's not a necessary part of the development. And he cites a case in his letter today in which he states, which states that generally approved only in extraordinary circumstances and should not be used in place of normal legislative process of amending zoning regulations. And he states that as to how the commission should approach variances. And he cites the case of Lovell versus Planning Commission of Independence. And it's an Oregon State Court of Appeals case from 1978. However, that same case was cited by the Court of Appeals simply 2 years later in Atwood versus City of Portland. Got Mr. Malone's letter early this evening and I was able to look up this case where it was cited. And in that case, just as in this one, the petitioners, which were the petitioners to LUBA, to the Court of Appeals, and then to the Court of Appeals, which were the opponents of the applicants in that case, they said, just as in this case, they said, well, the variance, the staff erred in granting the variance because they weren't specific enough in addressing each of the particular instances where the variance should be granted. And they also said, well, it was necessary, it was possible to develop the property without the variance. Court of Appeals disagreed and sided with the developers and sided with the city staff, which said that city council's findings with respect to grant variances were not inadequate on ground that though council made findings that proposed variances met the 4 general conditions for granting variances under the city code, council did not make separate findings of each of the variances satisfied in his petitions. I would argue that in this case, staff even took it a step further than the staff did in that case, which was upheld. Staff has done a great job of explaining how the variance process does allow the variance in this case. Again, the variance is necessary to enhance that unique character of this area. How are we doing on time?
If you have about 7 minutes as a group.
Oh.
I mean, 13 minutes.
Okay, Jason,
I'm sorry.
you were gonna make.
I-
Okay, well, I'm gonna turn it over now to just really quickly before I turn it over to some of the more technically proficient members of the team. I just want to point out that a big part of this concern last week and through this process was the traffic, as staff pointed out. And again, there was some clarification on the traffic impact that 2021 was not handpicked as a slow year for traffic. Traffic is in fact, that was actually a relatively high year. And so the traffic concerns should not prohibit this project. So I'm going to turn it over now to the architect who's going to tell us more about the exciting parts of this development and why it fits in with the purpose of 17-20001 and its unique qualities and enhancing the natural area. Thank you.
Okay, there's 12 minutes left, just to let you know.
You get into presentation mode, is that possible?
Yes.
Should I cancel? Pause. Pause.
I swear I won't say a lot.
It's okay, I paused it.
Perfect. Yes, very good. Okay. Thank you. So just a quick context reminder and some of the surrounding interesting parcels in terms of the other hotels that are in the neighborhood and a few of the other sites where there may be some workforce housing interest and or RFPs and other things going on. Back to the sort of the front door again. We'll skip past that if I can. No. Next, please. Oh, that worked. I will, I'll just point out here, we did a couple of little quick variations. One was the angle of the road as it meets Beach Loop Road. This is just a thought and an idea and an option that we could suggest. That was to bring it out of alignment with the neighbors across the street because there was a public comment and a conversation we had with them about headlights coming into their back doors. We thought, yep, we could do what we can to mediate that. And then a couple of the houses, like by the number 12 in the south end, we twisted one to just say maybe we twist that away so it doesn't face straight at the neighbor. So we're trying to be, conscientious about who's next to us. So we did those little tweaks there just to say we were kind of trying to listen to the neighbors and see what we could do about ameliorating those relationships as much as we can. This, we highlighted some of the sort of the mechanical screening, which goes on the lower portion of the building to make sure that was highlighted. That is top left, number 10. And then where the loading bays are, which is sort of third from the top on the far right, number 11. So they would be screened in, and they're also in a very inconspicuous place, sort of around the back of the building. We have pulled the buildings away from the western boundary a further 10 feet. So instead of being 28 feet at the boundary, 8 feet away from it, we're now 53 feet from that boundary line. That's closest condition on that side. I'm going to skip past that because of time. Here, just to get back to that sort of height, like looking for the 35 versus the 28, right? We're talking about the building right in the center of the site. There's a view at the top left, which is from the ridge. And you can see I sort of marked a spot on the ridge line on the plan where you're viewing out towards it. The building's about the same height as those trees. It's within a few feet of the height of those trees. So with neighbors to the north and to the southeast, it is beyond a tree line, virtually invisible. And then from the west, we're again up on that ridge line, which is at like 105 to 116 feet. And we're down at 112 for the top of that building. So we are behind that ridge line. So for the neighbors from the west, anything but a glimpse would be hard to get. And that, again, that's from standing on that side. You can't see it. And that's it. I'm going to skip through these in the interest of time. All right. And introduce Alex. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Atchison. I'm a traffic engineer with Parametrics. I have 25 years experience. And I'm licensed in Washington and Oregon, and I prepared the traffic assessment. And I wanted to walk through what we did. It was not required as part of this application to submit a traffic study, but we knew that there was some concerns, so we wanted to proactively address those. And I just wanted to walk through like the purpose of our study, the methodology we walk through. And I know there's questions about volumes, how trips are generated, and what the results are. So for a traffic assessment or traffic study that's just looking at traffic operations, we first start by collecting traffic counts, traffic data. Then we forecast the trips that are expected to be generated by a project, a single family home, a McDonald's, a hotel, whatever. We need to forecast what that is expected to increase in traffic on the system. We analyze operations at intersections, and then we compare them to whatever standard is in the jurisdiction. And here it's the city and then also ODOT standards, since the highway runs through your town. And then we propose mitigation if necessary. And so for the traffic assessment, we had data that was from 2001 at Seabird and 101. And then we also had data from 2009 at Beach Loop and Seabird and 101. So, we were really hoping we would get some data at Beach Loop and Seabird. But what we did was look, what was the growth in those two at that Seabird and 101 where we actually have traffic counts in those years. And then we applied that growth 58% over that time frame to get to an estimate of what we thought would be the counts in 2001 for Beach Loop and Seabird. One thing that's really important here is we know traffic varies day to day, it varies month to month, and especially in a town like this, it's very seasonal. And so we followed the standard procedures, analysis procedures in the ODOT APM manual, which requires that we look at seasonal adjustments. And now we're looking at the 30th highest volume hour, because you don't want to design things to the worst case, but you really want to make sure you're covering all your bases. And so with that, we applied a 26% increase to the traffic counts and the forecasted traffic volumes at Seabird and Beach Drive. That's pretty significant, 25%. And then I know there's a question about COVID, and that is a good question because we all know traffic really changed in the COVID years. But looking at data from 2019 to 2021 and working with what we've worked with ODOT is that we know that things have kind of reached their new normal. And we've higher than, we're kind of pre-pandemic, we're above. So counts from 2021 and 2022 going forward are no longer adjusted for COVID. And then on the top of that, we want to say, we're looking, when is this project going to open? 2026. So then how much is the background traffic going to grow? We used a 2% annual growth rate, which is consistent with what the old TSP, I know the TSP is being updated, and then some data from Coos County. So that's how we got to our traffic counts background. And then we're looking at what does this project going to do? We wanted to look at land use and size, and we use standard methodology from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They published their trip generation manual, and it's used around the country to estimate development trips. We did a conservative. We assumed full occupancy of this hotel on the day. We assumed that the restaurant was standalone, not just like a nice restaurant that would people come to, but mostly we think it's going to be people from the hotel using the restaurant. We assumed everybody was driving. We did not assume any shuttles from the hotel, nothing like that. So we're trying to make sure we have a very conservative assumption. And what we got in our analysis was there would be 100 new PM peak hour trips. And the reason we look at the PM peak hour is not because it might be the highest generator of the use, but because it's the highest volumes on the system. And so we want to be looking again at that kind of worst case. And then we distribute across the network based on information from the TSP and some other studies. We did look at 3 intersections: site access, Beach Loop, Seabird and 101, kind of dumping it all on those 3 intersections. Again, kind of a conservative assumption. What's the worst case? So we looked at from our forecast from 2021, there are 2 standards of level of service mobility. On the highway, the US 101, it's based on what's a volume to capacity ratio. And on Seabird, it needs, which is, if there's more volumes than capacity, it's over 1.0. So that the standard is 0.8 for Seabird Drive. And on intersections in the city, it's level service D. So as Dana pointed out, level service is F from the 2021 forecast in 2026 with the build, but it is within the ODOT standard for volume to capacity ratio. It's under 0.8, it's 0.73. I wanted to point out that we also got counts that were taken from in 2022 as part of your TSP update. Which was great. We really wanted to kind of check our assumptions and our analysis and said these are more updated counts. And as the attorney said, the counts are lower in 2022 than they were in 2021. So we ran this, and the 2026 no build, I should point out, it's D at 101 and Seabird, level service A, and then it's level service E in 2026 with the project. And then the volume to capacity ratio is significantly lower than the standard. And so on the right side, I know this is very technical, forgive me, it goes with the job as a traffic engineer, but the average is, you can see it's about on average, it'd be, if you look at these 2 different, snapshots we're looking at with the project, it's going to be about a 13-second increase in time you're sitting at that stop sign at Seabird and 101 in the PM peak hour. And then at Seabird and Beach Loop, it was less than a second. So I think, oh, so just a summary, we know the traffic volumes are low on Beach Drive, but the counts show that. We know traffic volumes are going to increase with this project on Beach Loop Drive. The traffic assessment, we looked at the impacts using standard methodologies. We followed the guidelines, we compared to the standards, and what our analysis is showing that the intersections operate within the set standards, and therefore there's no impacts to mitigate from a traffic standpoint from this application. And with that, that's it. Thank you.
Looks like you have about a minute and a half if you need to say something.
Lawyers always got something to say. One thing that I did forget, I was feeling a little bit pressed for time because I didn't want to take up the important stuff that the technical folks shared with you. But as far as the question that we had earlier about the geotech report, that will be done at some point. It's not required to be done at this stage of the process. They're intending to do it later on in the process, zoning compliance. There'll be a geological assessment review and geological report. So that answers that question. Thank you.
Still 1 minute.
So, Mr. Chair, can we ask a question of one of the applicants?
Pardon, hang on for a minute and let this lady talk here.
Hi, Sherry McGrath.
Yeah.
Heard a lot from me
Yeah.
last week, so I'm going to be mostly silent tonight. But to correct Dana, we actually submitted the architectural updates last night at 7 p.m. and followed up this morning at 7 a.m. The architects did submit a consolidated presentation to expedite the program this morning at 10:30-ish, but it wasn't tonight that we submitted last minute. As far as we know, everything that was of concern was submitted. We do have a geotechnical report. Typically, we submit a GAR along with zoning compliance so that there's a comparison of what is this report talking to in relation to what the buildings are and the engineering associated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, yes, we can ask questions.
So this question is for Chris Bell. This is Commissioner Norman, Chris. I'm hanging on the wall above Dana's head. So last week, you had mentioned that you were willing to meet with folks out on site the next day after the commission meeting. I was wondering if that had occurred.
Yes. Yeah, we met with, 10 people, dozen people in, I think 3 or 4 different sort of meeting areas. So we did meet a few people, and then I think some of the suggestions I just made about twisting a little road or a building right here or there are a result of having those conversations and listening to people's concerns.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Oh,
Please.
okay.
One thing I wanted to confirm is because these phrases keep popping up. And my understanding based on reading the proposal is there is no community pool or workforce housing included in this proposal. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay, thank you. I think there's some confusion in the community about that. I have a few questions, please. One is, there's a lot of concern that I've read in the letters to the planning department about infrastructure and its ability to support your proposal. And I just want to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you had a pre-application meeting with the city, and that included representatives from Bandon Utilities, including sewer and water. And my understanding is they, along with our city engineer, basically agreed that our current infrastructure would support your development. Is that correct? Okay, but I did have a question about a comment by Dyer Engineering, our city engineer. And they made a reference to needing to know what the required fire flow would be for your sprinkler system or sprinkler systems. And I think the concern with some folks is that we don't want to be in a situation like I understand Port Orford was, where there isn't sufficient water pressure to serve the city hydrants on the perimeter of the development. So has that information, Gina, has that been provided to the planning department or?
No, that would come later. The master plans show that the water main and beach loop was to be upgraded to a 10-inch to account for water flow, fire flow specifically for the
Yes.
hotels on beach loop. So I think the city engineer and the city's already acknowledged that it's subpar at this point. We are proposing to provide on-site water for suppression and emergency purposes that will offset that. But generally, and there's also other means of fire suppression and commercial use. It's not always water-based, it can be chemical.
We are pretty used to having negotiations with the fire department and with the engineering teams at the city as to how we meet the standards that we need to meet. And it's not always the same every single time. And if it means that we've got low water pressure, then we have to figure about how do we retain water for that use? How do we have pumps that give us the pressures we need, et cetera? So
Okay.
there's usually or almost always a technical solution that one can
Okay.
figure out for that.
Okay, thank you. And what was I think you made a reference to on-site water storage. I don't recall seeing that in the plans anywhere.
Is that the city's water reservoir that you're building? Is that the on-site water?
Yes, again, it's not part of this Gravel Point application, but we did show on a plan where the workforce housing would be located, where the swimming pool would be located, and where the water reserve would be located in the future.
But that's not a definite.
To clarify,
Correct.
if water was water retention storage was needed on site for that fire use, then we would just have to do
Okay.
that.
There's nothing specific to that at this time, though.
No, I think it's part of our our technical study to figure out what we actually need.
Okay,
Is that required to obtain fire insurance?
Yeah,
To have
there's-
that
there's-
on-site water?
Yeah, it's all about how the sprinkler system works, and yet I'm going to assume at this point that it is a sprinkler building because of the way we normally build things, and then how does that sprinkler get the pressures it needs to operate? And it's a technical solution we'd have to meet.
Building the water reserve is not just a gift to the city. It's also.
That's a
requirement.
separate issue. That is a separate issue. I'm saying that if there is requirement on site,
Yeah,
because we need to do it because the sprinklers don't work without it, then that's.
it was
that's
just
the case.
presented that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in fire suppression is in addition to
Yeah.
and separate from the water reserve.
okay.
Chair, can I just clarify one thing very quickly? Because I was confused in your application and thought you put something in there that said you were upgrading the water line. And then I talked to the Public Works Department, and Beach Loop Drive in that section has both a 6-inch water line and a 10-inch water line. So the water line already exists. Just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Well, that's great for everybody then.
Oh, that works. Okay.
I have a few more questions, please.
Oh, all right.
If that's all right. And then considering infrastructure also, I understand Bannon Power did not participate in the pre-application meeting, but that subsequently they have indicated that there's sufficient power to support a development of this sort, provided, of course, that the applicant is responsible for the purchase of items such as transformers. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Partially correct. Bannon Power was present and was the most vocal at the pre-application meeting.
Mhm.
It was infrastructure from Public Works that we didn't receive a lot of feedback from. The electric department very much specified that the more advanced notice we have to order supplies, the better, because it can take 2 years to get transformers. They also indicated that they would work with us on appropriate locations to hide the transformers and make it really blend into the environment. That's why we said we'd have to work with them on the screening methods, because we already had that conversation in the pre-app.
Great. And the transformers will be located on your property and not city right of ways.
That is up to Bannon City Power, but
Okay.
typically there's some kind of a transformer that's there and then a vault and other transformers throughout the site. That's
Okay.
true with residential as well.
Thank you. A few other things, please. Thank you for the presentation by the engineer from Parametrics. I'm sorry I didn't get her last name, but I had a question or follow-up questions on that. And it kind of to restate one of my questions from the last meeting. So the study does not look at AM trips, is that correct? It focuses on PM because that's where the data is.
Correct. We looked at PM.
Okay. And I'm interested in the 111 peak hours or peak hour trip. So in the opinion of Parametrics, with 110 room hotel and 32 suites and 258 seat restaurant, 40 to 60 staff estimated, and delivery and service vehicles, the data to you indicates only 111 PM trips?
Yes, yes.
But we have no way to know how many of those would be driven in the morning traffic.
We do.
And-
There's data for AM trips and I
Oh,
did
okay.
look that up. And for the biggest use, well, the restaurant would be 0 because it's dinner. And the restaurant is
Oh, so the
generally,
restaurant is only open
I
for
believe,
dinner.
is it dinner only? Maybe I've gone that far, but typically in the AM peak hour, what we look at would be like 6 to 8 AM. So unless the restaurant was serving 258 people in the morning, it's probably lower volumes. The hotel is similar rates in the PM, the AM to the PM peak
Mhm.
rates, so.
Is there a reason why the AM data wasn't submitted? Probably because it wasn't requested.
No, typically for traffic assessments and traffic studies, we look at the PM peak hour because we're looking at the volumes on the roadway that have the highest volumes, because that's really going to be the driver. Unless the use is, for example, has a very high trip generation in the AM peak hour. Hotels can or cannot, it depends.
So it's industry standard to.
Industry standard to look at the PM peak hour,
Okay,
yes.
very good. And one more question at this time, please. A major concern in just about every letter that I've read submitted to the planning department. And I believe your proposals and responses are starting to address somewhat the concern, and that's the traffic flow down Seabird through residential areas, perhaps past our schools, through our park, through Old Town to get to your development. And consistently, people want to understand why as part of your initial development, there is not a proposal to design and build a road from Oregon Highway 101 via Edna or some other avenue directly to the resort, not tying into Carter, not tying into Face Rock. And I understand there's some issues, but maybe you could summarize for all of us why, what discussions you have had with the city up front to make you determine that that might be, but not definitely would be a later development.
Well, I can talk
Yeah.
about part of that. Well, we've talked to the city about what you have before you, which is extending Carter to Beach Loop and providing a stub in the north-south direction so that they can connect a system in the future when a master plan and annexation is required. And that was the extent. The city didn't talk to us about extending Highway 101 onto property that we currently didn't own at the time. It's not within city limits and it's not required for this development. Now, whether it's warranted, that was in part of your study, as you looked at when does that connection come into play?
Right, and based off the use and the forecasted trips in this application. Another roadway would not be warranted.
Hmm.
And if I may just add a point of clarification about how those trips, there's a good question about hotel rooms, deliveries. The trip rates in the ITE trip generation manual are based off years of survey data that has been gathered by traffic engineers. And they look at the land use and they look at different variables, like a hotel has 110 rooms. And then they count how many cars go in and cars go out. And it's not necessarily related to deliveries or the people there. They just know So when you can use that data point later on and apply it to the next hotel, kind of encompasses all the use that would be within that.
Okay.
But yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
So it does say in the code that part of the conditional use process could be a condition to access from another area. So although it's not required, we could put that as a condition. Can you speak to how you would respond to that?
I think that we asked this before too, has city council said that that's allowed to require annexation and to connect a new road into a property? It's not under the same ownership and it's not the same project. We're talking about a project that we submitted within the city limits abandoned in the CD1 zone. It's isolated. It meets all of the criteria. So I would question, this is the legal question, but I don't know if the planning commission can require annexation to bring in a new road if it's not warranted.
I read something about that, and from my understanding is we cannot. So,
So if it was a commercial property without the need for annexation, it's a different story than I'm assuming now. Than
Well,
if it were,
when you annex the property, if and when the property next door is annexed, you'll have to have a master plan, and that will show what the proposed development is phased over a period of time. That's going to include with a subdivision, if that's the case, and all road improvements at that time. That's not what we're here to talk about.
I think what she was referring to though, the way things are written, probably what we were assuming is that that can be requested, but that doesn't take into effect the reality of the fact that it would have to be annexed this time. It's a different thing. Commercial properties, you can ask for those things, but in normal circumstances, you're not required to annex. So I think she was
Right,
referring
as
to.
part of the conditional use
Yes.
permit, we can ask you to access from a different point.
Well,
I'm
the other-
asking if there is another access point,
Okay,
and that if that is a legal issue, I'd love to hear.
the other
what the
access point
access-
that exists right now is to Face Rock. And the topography on that part of Face Rock would make it incredibly difficult to put in a road right there. That's why we show a stub to the east, where the topography is flat. We can make those connections when it's warranted to make that connection point. But if you were to go up Face Rock, that dune and everything that's gone into the intentional development design goes away. You don't have this project.
Yeah, I guess my assumption of that would be that that condition would be that it's from another right of way, not just from a neighbor's property.
Right, I'm not asking you to access it from a neighbor's property. But I have major concerns about the construction traffic on Beach Loop, about the delivery traffic on Beach Loop. We need to either have Beach Loop brought up to standards, and I totally recognize that that's not the developer's issue, but that's our issue as the planning commission. The local improvement district needs to be in place, and there needs to be plans in place, because currently it will not be safe to add all of this traffic coming into your proposed access point. There's people walking down the middle of Beach Loop in the summer. You know that when there's
We don't disagree with that. It's
like,
just a matter of the
there's
forming an LLC.
people driving, it just cannot sustain construction traffic. I very much appreciate what you guys are doing, and I would love to see it move forward. But this is my only concern at this point.
Part of the issue that I see, being someone that travels there, I don't live there, but I travel it enough. I do agree that there are issues. Part of the issues are the pedestrians who are walking in the middle of the road. Part of the problem is people jogging along the side of the road when there's a sidewalk that they could be jogging on. Skateboards in the middle of the road. We can't fix all the problems just by improving the road. And that's just fact.
okay, I think we beat that one up.
Not necessarily.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to open it up to people talking. Remember, if you talked earlier in this, it's the same hearing as it was last week. So if you've already talked, you've had your 3 minutes. We only do it once. And please be courteous, polite, not slanderous, and or rude. And those of you on the computer, please click on the raise hand feature in the webinar controls. This will notify the staff that you would like to speak, and city staff will unmute your microphone, and a prompt will appear to confirm that you will be unmuted. Once you accept the prompt, you will have 3 minutes. Once your public comment has ended, you'll be muted again. Is there anybody on phone? Okay, I won't read the phone one. All right.
Mr. Chair, are we going to have the ability to ask questions of the public if we wish?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, who's going to speak first? Who's got the list?
Gloria Arnold.
I'm not going to read the entire start of my letter because you already have that. I did want to make a quick comment, though. I am married to a retired geotechnical engineer, and boy, you want that report before anything happens. So don't let that be too late in the process. I'm coming from the other end of all of this, the other side of all of this development. And I know that everyone keeps saying that we're not talking about that end, but we live at that other end and we're concerned. As they develop their bioswales or ditches, as we know them, are they going to impact our aquifer that feeds all our wells next to them? I'm a little worried. They want to capture runoff and groundwater, and they want to filter, and they want to fill their, as I saw in the paperwork, a 250,000 gallon reservoir. And that reservoir, I think, in the placement that I've seen it, is not far from the back end of my property. Gee, I can't wait to look at that every day. I'm worried about the idea of a reservoir of that size. Seismic activity, again, you need that geotechnical engineer's report, because if we have any decent activity, you're going to have liquefaction out there immediately. And then I don't want to watch 250,000 gallons of water coming at my backyard. Why did we not look at placing this at the south end of town at the edge of the city limits? Bandon Dunes has done quite well placing their project, beautiful project, at the other end of town, not in the middle of town, not in the middle of a residential area, so to speak. I have a few questions about Mr. Scalisi's degrees. Does he have a degree in wetlands and hydrology? Everything I've read about him, and apparently he is the one that's doing all of the holes and looking for water coming up through the table, through the soil. And I don't see any sign of any degrees. He studied at, and that's what it says everywhere. Is the Army Corps of Engineers coming in on this at all? They had a lot to do with shutting down what was going to be built on that 10 acres to our west.
Sorry, your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Justin Potter. I was born in Bandon. My mother was born in Bandon. My grandmother came here in the 20s. We've seen a lot of development, a lot of growth. This is a great opportunity for the city of Bandon and all its residents. Our children have had to move away because of jobs and less opportunity. These people are willing to give us an opportunity, give our children an opportunity. I hear a lot of people say, I moved here and I don't want anybody else to move here. We live in paradise. We all have to admit that. But we all got to understand, somebody lived here before we did. Before Beach Loop was even developed, before Seabird was even developed, before Ocean Trails was even developed. Somebody was saying, hey, we live in paradise. We don't want these people, but we all accepted them. I think we should accept Gravel Point. The reason being opportunity for our town, our children, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening, commissioners. I wanted to.
Your name, please.
Oh, Claudine Hunthausen, 3795 Beach Loop Drive, Bandon. I just wanted to comment that with regard to a geotech report, that we have had a practice of having a geotech report from the people who are hired to work with the developer throughout the process of the project. And that's a pretty big tab. And there's very little incentive for someone who is going to make a lot of money to say that a project is not viable in a particular location. And I think this is something that should be addressed by the Planning Commission in the future. I think that the geotech report should be totally independent from the people who are going to work on the project.
I think you should stop there. Accusing somebody of dishonesty.
I am not making accusations, and I don't appreciate that comment at all. I am suggesting that we want people to make a report who do not have a financial interest in the completion of the project. That's all. All right, now, I would also like to say that this CD1 zone was part of a design that was done by the people of Bandon, and it was a fairly large project, and there were a lot of people involved. And the CD1 zone, I believe, was visualized as a primarily residential area, and the other purposes were listed as conditional use. That means, in my mind, that the council or the planning commission has the right to say no. And I just wanted you to keep that in mind. The citizens of Bandon really have no obligation to permit this proposal at all. I have heard that a comment the other night that there will be something like $1 million going into our SDC fund, which is very nice. But if you stop to think of today's economy, you have to realize that $1 million is not a lot of money. A modest home in a good location in Seattle or Portland or San Francisco sells for over $1 million today. And that $1 million is not going to go very far. Also, I wanted to remind the Planning Commission that SDCs do not cover the full cost of adding to
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Jason Humans. I live on 7th Street, Bandon, Oregon. Proud of it. It's a great town. This gentleman said, I wasn't born here. I have many friends who have been born here. People that jumped off lumber ship in the
Could you pull the
1890s.
mic closer to your mouth?
And so I'm gonna get right to the point. I'm just here for infrastructure. We maybe have heard enough. I agree with Claudia that we should have independence on these earth tech things and stuff. That's common practice in most construction projects. Water is already an issue. We know. Port Orford, as you guys have mentioned. My friends in the fire department down there. Yeah, he was there that day. The water ran dry in their fire hydrant. They have a very similar water system to what Bandon has. It's creek, no reservoir, a tank on a hill. And it was 5 o'clock. Everyone's using the water faucets. Our pressure on 7th Street. You can ask anyone down there. At 5 o'clock, that pressure goes down to half of the pressure that it is prior to 5 o'clock. It's like a switch goes off. And that goes for 2 hours. When is this fire going to happen? Is it going to wait for us to be in the perfect moment? I don't think so. It'll happen when it happens. Okay, that's the water. We need my point is we need a reservoir. We need more water. We can have a 10-inch and a 6-inch line. That's just going to drain that faster. I mean, there's a point when and there's more to come. This is the first time we ever heard of this project coming. We know of other ones in the works. So when this guy's get done, what's the water pressure going to be? Traffic. I live on Beach Loop. Worst times, they were right, 6 to 9 o'clock. Not too great at 10 o'clock. The road's got dips in it everywhere from the big trucks and stuff coming through. And there'll be bigger trucks for bigger projects like this. Okay. Then the sewer system. I've been hearing about the sewer needing to be moved and all kinds of things. I think what I'm getting at is like, we're going to be in even if we can come up with the money for all this somehow, we're going to be in a perpetual state of construction. And we've been that way since 1990. It was real slow at first, a house for each contractor a year and a couple of small projects. Most of our workers coming down here are not even from our town. We do need more jobs. That's another thing. But they don't need any more service jobs unless we get workforce housing for them. The Commons, the condo complex behind Lord Bennett's. That was promised way in under this kind of a start as to be workforce housing.
Sorry, your time is up.
That's it.
Yep.
I wonder. Next.
Hello, my name is Ray Foxell. My wife Sharon and I retired and relocated to Bandon a little over a year ago. We came from a town that saw tremendous growth. It grew from 85,000 people to 120,000 people over a 20-year period. And it grew because that city had proactively invested in building their infrastructure. We enjoyed Bandon. We selected Bandon after a thorough review of the entire Oregon coast, and this is where we want to be long term. I appreciate the city that provides us with monthly updates with our utility bills. And through that, I understand that hotel tax revenue is a key driver of the city budget. So I get it. This project makes sense from an economic standpoint. But you've heard from the residents and we've heard ongoing concerns over things like traffic, habitat, wildlife habitat destruction, and added stress on our city resources like our water system. So here's my perspective, a new guy in town. This sounds like a 10-pound project being squeezed into a 5-pound bag. It's too big for Bandon, and it's not in the best interest of those folks that live here and those that have come here to revel in the goodness of small town Bandon. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Robert McLernan. You guys have a little bit of a problem because you don't include any of us that live in the county. And we're right adjacent to both of these projects, the one that we're talking about tonight and the one we keep finding out we can't talk about. I think if you guys are worth a salt, you would include us in all this. We're not notified for what's going on. We've gotten different brochures through Facebook and everybody else about the water tank, about the worker housing, about the access to this project. And it needs to be clarified. I'm not opposed to having this project there if it's done smartly. But with all the miscommunication that has come from what's been published, and it is the brochures that are from this developer saying, congratulations, this other part is now part of, but now it's not. I mean, how can you not make a bunch of confused people? You need to get ahead of it. And we are in the donut. We need to know, and I think you guys should notify us. Thank you.
Just say, you said you'd like to be included. How would you like to be included?
Well, we don't get any notices. I don't know if you send notices to people in the city.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, but we're right next to the property line to this project. Nobody likes to talk about where we're at, but when we keep seeing a little black line showing roads coming into the donut hole, there's going to be people coming down our little gravel roads that are maintained by us. And we're pissed. We're pissed off enough to be here. I like the idea of a hotel that's done smartly. I like the idea of opportunities for employment. I love all that. But we're in a little area where we got to make sure that it doesn't impact us not smartly. So that's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Fair, if I might clarify, or sorry, Chair. I just wanted to clarify that we notice property owners within 250 feet of the subject property, regardless of if they're in the city or the county. If you were not notified, you should double check to make sure that your mailing address is correct with the county assessor.
What kind of a notification was that?
We send a mailed notification. I don't think we're supposed to take questions from the audience,
No,
but we do send a letter.
Yeah, no, this is all right to clarify. Yeah, it is a letter. Next.
Hi, my name is Rita Buck, and for about 14 years, we've owned property in the donut hole. Almost 3 acres and gravel road getting there. I've seen, we basically have a herd of about a dozen deer, about 20 turkeys. I've seen fox, porcupines, skunk, and raccoons. So this is all wildlife in that area. And we're just east of this development. We're not on the property line, but we're on the east side of North or Airport Road. The old, anyways. The traffic, just coming out of Edna to get onto 101 in the summer, it's difficult. It's great. There's a center lane, but you know, with summer travel, you know, and this is going to compound it tremendously. The impact on our roads and services is just going to be huge. Us locals, I've been here over 30 years, 15 of them rural, and 15 in town roughly. And it's just, it's too much. It's just way too much for this town. We don't need something that big, like the 10-pound in a 5-pound bag. It's just too much. And I have noticed, I travel a lot between here and Reno and I-5, and the median between in the last 5 years has gathered so much trash. And now I'm seeing it all up and down 101 from here to Coos Bay. It's just, there's no respect from tourists. We live right next to a vacation rental. I've come home to find people parked in our driveway, so I can't even get to my garage because they don't care. And that's more of what we're gonna attract with all of this coming in. It's just, you know, too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Some people on the internet. Okay, if you'd call them up.
Can you hear me? Yeah, my name's Callan Taylor. I live at 1315 Strawberry Drive. I'm here with my wife. We sat through the last meeting and appreciate the opportunity to comment here on time. We have small kids, couldn't come tonight. So I would just say that a year and a half ago, when we saw people start to survey the land, our immediate reaction was kind of heartbreak. We live right on the dune there, and we've lived there for 5 years, going on 5 years, and over the last 3 years, I would say that our kids and us at times were pretty much the only people who were using that dune. We cut trails through the gorse to the top of the hill. We went and explored back through the woods, and so initially we were, sad to see that the plans were to change. But having thought on it for a couple of years and talked to my wife and my family about it, we realized that like change is inevitable, and the land never was ours. I appreciated what the gentleman said early. There's people here before us, there'll be people here after us. So we literally live directly across from where the main lodge will be. And it's scary to think about something that big going up right next to our house. But I'm focused on the fact that in the last meeting, the developers said that they were going for LEED Gold certification. And I've been following LEED projects for 20 plus years. I feel lucky to have the opportunity to welcome a project like that into our community. I think if people take a look at what LEED Gold means, that would ameliorate many of the concerns about geotechnical engineering and runoff issues, groundwater issues. That certification goes above and beyond any requirements for that, as far as I'm concerned. And I guess overall, I my family and I would just like to say that from what I've seen so far, I trust these folks and I think that given the options, it's probably the best the best case scenario, unless somebody wants to come up and the Nature Conservancy wants to buy it and turn it into a national park, that'd be great and all. But as far as development goes, I don't see a better route forward. And so we just wanted to voice our support for the project.
Thank you. I guess.
Hi, my name's Tammy McKee, and I'm actually zooming in from Utah. We love to come and visit Bandon, and we have family there. I was mostly curious about if this development was going to be done in phases, or if it would be done like a one and done with a certificate of occupancy being issued at the time that the whole development was completed.
I don't know.
So maybe they can answer that in the rebuttal.
Okay. Thank you.
And
they will come up for their closing, and maybe they can tell you that then.
Okay, all right. And then my other question was, and I probably missed this and I didn't see it in reviewing the documents, but what is the total occupancy of the whole development?
again,
Okay, perfect.
we can't have you doing questions of the.
Right. Okay. Those were just two questions I had. We've had projects where they're done in phases and there's no guarantee if there is, say they do the hotel first and it doesn't bring in the revenue that they expected, then the other phases don't get completed. So the project looks great as it's presented, but it's not, things always don't get through completion, you know, if it's a phased development. And then also, I also was wondering if the Army Corps of Engineers were going to get involved with the wetlands involved. So those were just my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, are there any other people willing with their hands raised?
That's all.
Okay. All right. See, we are going to, what?
You have a script in front of you that might tell you what to do next. I believe that.
All right, are there, does the staff have any comments?
Oh, isn't the applicant next?
Oh, no, I thought they were after you. Oh, no. You're right. Excuse me. It's your rebuttal time. You've got 10 minutes. I jumped ahead. Sorry about that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Darren Sandino. I'm with Parametrics. And I've been involved in some of the environmental aspects of the projects. And so my rebuttal, excuse me, is related to some of the discussion related specifically to the geotech report, the wetland report, and then some of the environmental things that we've talked about. So our team has enlisted the study and employment of a geotech who has produced a final report that will be provided. And then as a supplement to that report, specifically addressing the west side of the property, having unique characteristics related to landslides, we have a separate signed memo that has prescriptive language related to how those areas should be treated, in addition to the entire report that goes from the beginning to foundations, for those of you that are familiar, construction methods, all the way through, that provides a great amount of detail related to how those things would be orchestrated and how that would occur. So I just want to let everybody know that that had occurred. It had occurred a number of months ago. And then the latest report that we provided that was a supplement was was actually completed maybe a month ago. So we have both of those and can provide those. Related to the wetland study, we also had an independent third party that has done a number of wetland delineations within the Bandon area, Turnstone Environmental. I have personally been in contact with their biologist related to a number of different issues in his delineation on the site. I believe that has been provided to everyone and was recently in the last week acknowledged and accepted by DSL. So we have that documentation too that we can provide in terms of that. And then there's a comment, I think, related to the habitat aspect of this and understanding wildlife. You know, I also have a bit of a biology background too, so I understand some of these things, but related to, I think, what we're trying to do as a team and having these outreach. I think Chris spoke to that earlier, and using folks in the community to make sure that we're doing the right things. I personally have been in touch with Darcy at Stillwater Nursery, and we're working through, I have a meeting with her actually tomorrow morning, and we're going to talk through and use her. And my intention is to have her involved throughout the project. She's a local, she has a lot of local knowledge. She's impressive. She's dealt with a lot of things related to perched water table and some of those nuances that are unique to Bandon. I personally have done a lot of development on the coast. And so I think, you know, we don't want to go this alone. We want to use the right resources there. So anyway, hope that helps. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
You have 7 minutes.
Well, I'd like to, first of all, thank you everybody for coming out. Comments are important, even those that aren't supporting the project. The developer they do hear you and they're doing their best. And I think they're going out of the way to listen and to work with folks. I want to come back to where I started. And that is the purpose in the code 17-20010, controlled development zone. And the last sentence says future development is to be controlled in order to enhance and protect the area's unique qualities. That's what this project does. It does protect and enhance the unique qualities. It's bringing it back from what is just a patch of gorse. Some statistics on this project. It's 24.8 acres and only 10% is building. It will be building structures and only 22% in all impervious structures, including the roads, parking lots, buildings. It's only 22% of that. The rest of it is going to be kind of this natural native wilderness and beach area that we want to enhance. They're allowed to have up to 65%, but they're only having 22. That is a controlled and enhanced project. The gentleman that spoke, I think one of the last people to speak, he said, this is given the options, this is the best. It absolutely is, because if this project doesn't go through, and that property sits, maybe returns to gorse if the next owner or it doesn't keep up with the gorse, and maybe somebody else eventually does come by and decides to put in use that's just outright. There are outright uses there, including residential care homes. And someone could fill up that 24.8 acres with outright use, and there'd be very little to really stop it. And you're still going to have traffic, maybe more traffic, but you're not going to have just 10% buildings or 22% all impervious. You're going to have much more, which probably means much more traffic. So this is a perfect fit. It's not a 10-pound project with a 5-pound bag. This is a 5-pound project in a 10-pound bag. In fact, again, only 22%. So thank you, everybody. If there are other members of the team that would like to use their last couple of minutes, I'm going to defer to them. And it looks like we will hear.
There are 4 minutes left.
Oh, wow. Cool, thank you. So just in case it didn't get there, because we don't have confirmation on our end, we're emailing the city right now, the geotechnical engineer report, the memo that they came back with that actually said that we were exempt from the geo investigation anyway, and also the wetland study, just so it's on the record officially before the end of the hearing. Other than that, were there other questions for the applicant?
Well, actually, are there any commissioners who wish to ask questions of this group?
Are we allowed to just comment?
Yes.
I personally trying not to do what I did last.
Actually, I don't think we
Okay.
want to comment
Okay.
right now. We'll comment at the end.
Okay, just make sure you give me a chance before you close it.
What's that?
Deliberation will be after, if you have comments or thoughts.
Okay.
So any questions?
Is the project currently fully funded? We've had other applicants come before us who then were not able to secure funding to complete the project.
Yeah, funding's in place for all of it, Brett? Yes.
So the question about phasing, the woman just asked, is there some way you can address that part?
So last week we talked about doing a 2-year build. You know, we figured the rest of this year is going to be in permitting, part of next year, breaking ground and putting in the infrastructure and then moving on to the structures. So unless the city wants a phased development, I think it's the intention to build it at one time.
Okay.
Is that correct, Brett?
Thank you. I think that just speaks to what she was asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
She just didn't want something to start and then just be.
Correct. So, you know, there was a lot of comments. We really did do our best to try to address all of them, but it was a lot to do that. So those were submitted. We tried to,
yes,
you know, put where those were found in the findings and follow-up comments. I know we had to breeze through the presentation that the architects did, and a lot of that was lost, unfortunately, because they did put a lot of thought into those site meetings last week and how to, you know, make this more compatible for those neighbors who had concern. But I think what you've heard tonight is that you also have neighbors that are in complete support of the project, and that means a lot too. It's not just a few people who are opposed. And I think all of us have the same concerns about when is Beach Loop going to be upgraded. let's see what the city comes up with. They're working on a sidewalk and a hiking plan, right, or, path plan, bicycle plan. They're updating their TSP. There's opportunity to form an LID, in which case this property owner would contribute to that. So I think it's an exciting time to think about growth in Bandon. But it would be up to the city to tell us when that might be coming and how we might be able to help.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, does the staff have any comments?
Sure, I'll just make a sort of closing statement. I first of all want to thank everyone in the community for providing public comment. It's not every application that we get that we max out the Zoom and have a full city hall. So thank you to everyone who let us know how you were feeling about this project. I also want to clarify, I meant to do that in my opening, and it was mentioned a couple times there in both the submitted materials and discussion here. I do think there was some confusion about what was actually before you tonight, and that there were some other proposals made that were not part of the project site. So just as a reminder, we're talking about the about 25-acre piece that contains what Bear read at the beginning, not the reservoir, the community pool, or the workforce housing. Those are not part of this decision. And would have to be applied for at a separate date. I also wanted to close with, I think in general, this is a good project. And I think a lot of you have heard from community members that there's some excitement around seeing a project that has unique aspects like the LEED certified, like taking up little space, like enhancing wetlands, and those are all wonderful things. And I also think there are probably some unanswered questions that we may need to discuss further. The transportation and access conversation, I think we can deliberate, you can deliberate a little bit more next time. To me, what I'm hearing from you and from the community is that the numbers that they've provided may show either an E or an F, but that the traffic impacts are very real in that area, and that there could be some mitigation that could be done to fix that. And I think you can find that if you don't feel like there is sufficient evidence in the record to prove that they have the facilities required, in particular, looking at Seaburden 101, that you can deny the project. So I want to put it out there because I think the initial staff report was, sort of getting to, if you wanted to approve, here's what you could do, but I did not mention that in the last one. So anyway, wanted to bring that up. Am I missing anything from this side that you want to talk about? Okay. I think that's our staff rebuttal. Do you have any questions?
I have a question of staff.
Comments.
Sorry, staff ending.
You're not rebutting.
I'm not rebutting. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I have a question of staff,
Yes.
if I may.
Mhm.
of course.
So typically, Dana, is there like a standard ratio or something about what percentage of assistant development charges cover actual development? We know it doesn't cover all of it.
No.
50%, 60%. I mean,
So system development charges are assessed based on a method, like a pre-approved methodology. So it generally takes into consideration the square footage of a structure or like the amount of impervious surface. It depends on which SDC you're referring to. And I couldn't tell you like what percentage of a project it will cover because they just submit the amount that is required based on the impact of their development. And then the city uses that funding for the list of projects that we have in our capital improvement plans. So it doesn't necessarily go to a specific project, but just to that pot to be used for future development.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to get some comments from people up here about the RV parking. I think that's because if we don't do that, if we don't want to let them get by, we'd have to have a variance to let them get by with two. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think two is sufficient. but my question, can I ask a question of the applicant? Or are we beyond that point?
I think you can ask, we were just talking about, I think you can still ask questions. I think you're gonna have to close the hearing though, and then you'll deliberate outside of the hearing once
Oh, okay.
the record has to be left open for 7 days and let all that evidence come in. So I think before you close the hearing though, if there are any more questions, now's the
Right.
time to allow for that additional evidence to come in.
The, I understand the rationale behind proposing 2 RV sites at the development, but what I would ask is, I mean, I've been RVing for 35 years and everyone I talk to that drives these big 40-foot, $500,000, or probably $750,000 rigs now with tows behind them, they always look forward to staying at a nice location after 7 or 10 days, and they like to eat at a nice restaurant. So if people in these RVs should want to visit your restaurant or stay at your facility, and you have a limitation of 2 RV sites, what do you propose to do to keep these folks from parking on city streets in their, leaving their RVs there and then driving their toads in to park on your on-site parking?
Step one, I suppose, on answering that would be that some of the parking is linear along the roads, parallel parking, for lack of a better word. So combination of a couple spaces into a singular space would be easy enough. It wouldn't need any special tools or permissions. They would just park there, and that would be, on the site. So I think that would stop them from going off-site to park.
Okay, so you would put, are you now thinking 8 is sufficient or is acceptable, or are you still feeling that 2 designated sites is sufficient for a 40-foot rig with a toad or a trailer?
This was one of the slides that got pushed through pretty quickly tonight. But they did delineate for you in color on the site plan showing where the RV parking can fit. Additionally, let's talk about the site and the parking as we're talking about on-site, not on Carter Street. We've actually asked the city to make an exception for no on-street parking along Carter to reduce this issue. The parallel parking on site, whether you designate it as RV or individual spaces, is still large enough and long enough to accommodate more than 2 RVs.
So there would be a combination you feel for 8, for example?
We'd rather not have 8 designated RV spaces. However, in front of the villas, those parking spaces are long enough for RV if you want to see those designated. The question would be, do they have to be designated for RV only, or is it that you have space to accommodate the RV when they arrive?
Right,
And
exactly.
potentially move somebody if need be. And the answer to that is yes, we have sufficient space for that.
Okay,
Additionally, the city does have a clause that we can lease parking within 500 feet. So as a condition of approval, we had proposed that if this was an issue, you could make it a condition of approval that we either show and delineate 8 RV parking spaces on site, or we provide an off-street lease prior to zoning compliance.
or the third option, so I want to make sure I understand you, is you're saying that the way the parking is configured now, there would be room technically for 8 RVs if we utilize that parallel parking.
Correct, and parking in front of the villas.
Okay, great,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that answered one of my questions. Any other questions? Okay, well then I'm going to go ahead and close this hearing and we will have a discussion. First of all,
No, you're not discussing.
You actually need to hold the record open for another 7 days.
right,
So it's not a time for the planning commission to discuss or deliberate.
oh, we
That-
can't discuss?
Nope, that will happen when the record is closed and you have your meeting in which you intend to make a decision.
Oh, well, my mistake.
Sorry.
I'm so embarrassed. We will, we'll close the hearing then and continue the hearing.
No.
No,
Sorry,
not continue. Hold it
We're
up.
closing the
Hold it.
hearing and holding the record open for 7 days.
Yes,
So that means you can submit additional written evidence over
Right.
the next 7 days.
hold it open for 7 days.
Yes,
That's not the same thing as continuing.
that's correct.
Okay.
Sorry. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is October 19th at 7 PM here.
Well, I think we're gonna want to do it before then. But,
We can't.
oh, we
It
can't.
might even, were you listening to what I said at the beginning? It's either to, so you have to leave the record open for 7 days. Someone can also request the record be left open for another 7 days. And then the applicant can request that they have 7 days to respond to what's been submitted during that first 14-day period. So depending on when those are asked, it'll either be October 19th or November 2nd.
Well, I thought we could do one on the 12th.
No,
'Cause
sorry.
today's the 5th. 7 days is the 12th.
But then someone
two
can
7
request
day
an additional 7.
All right.
It's 3 periods of 7 days, depending upon how this turns out, which we don't know at this point in time. But the
We do
first
not.
7 days that the record is open is set.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're gonna show up here again on October 19th.
Oh, and a quick question, Dana. Submission of written material for this next 7-day period. What's the cutoff time for that, please?
So that, thank you for asking that, 5 PM, because that's the last time I'll be at my desk to collect it. So 5 PM on October 12th.
So that will give, that'll give the commission 7 days to digest any additional.
Well, no, because we won't get it.
Yeah, no, we'll send you the additional, we'll post it on the city's website and we'll send it to the planning commission, any new evidence that's received during that time. And we just don't know if the record's going to be extended further than that.
Another 7.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else? I know we haven't done this before, so
No, this is new to me.
I think maybe only one other time, so it is new.
So I guess then we're done. So I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.
Quick question.
Oh, you weren't quick enough.
It can be done after the meeting. It's
Okay. No, go ahead.
I just want to know how much of the material that was presented today, especially the traffic report, is in the documents we got.
So the traffic.
'Cause I didn't have a chance to go through everything. I vaguely
It's in there,
remember
I
seeing
saw it.
that.
Everything's in there. I did not send you their combined presentation, so I will send the presentation to you, and then that'll be posted on the city's website as well.
I've already got a stack that's too hard to read. Anyway, so
Yes.
everybody go home.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I want